Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have the second part of my very late mid-year series check-in, and this time we are talking about the 20 series I would like to finish before the end of 2020. So it is just a pure coincidence that there's 20 series here. However, I mean, that's a great number seeing as we are in the year 2020. So I have a page on my spreadsheet where I track what series I've started, what I'm in the middle of. I have them color coded so that I can color in the box with a color that represents the year that I've read the book in. So today we are only going to be talking about series that I have continued with in 2020. So there are more series than this that I haven't finished. It's just I haven't read a single book in that series in 2020, so I won't be talking about them today. This video is going to be in no particular order because I grabbed the books, stacked them up in size order for a thumbnail, and I can't be bothered putting them in chronological order or anything. So we're just going to go through them one by one. I'll give you a little bit of information what they're about, tell you how far into the series I am, and then if there's anything else about them, like if there's a particular reason I'm dragging my feet on them or anything, I will let you guys know. So starting off with one that I've already nearly finished, we have the Villains Duology by V. Schwab. At the time of filming this and at the time of you guys watching this, I'm 100 and something pages into the second book in this duology, Vengeful, so pretty much by the end of the week I will have finished this duology. However, I have not yet. So this is a series about villains. In the first book we follow Victor and Eli, who are college students, and they are trying to figure out the secret to creating extraordinaries. Extraordinaries are people with superpowers, and Victor and Eli discover that the secret to gaining powers is to have a near-death experience. So they proceed to kill themselves and each other to gain these powers. Now this book is actually told in two timelines, and in the present day timeline, Victor has just got out of prison where he has been for the last 10 years, and he is looking for Eli as he has a score to settle and they are now mortal enemies. Absolutely loving this series so far. Very strange. I think I'm enjoying Vengeful a little bit more than Vicious, and like I said, I will have finished this very soon. I then have the Tyrant Soul series by C.L. Wilson. This is a high fantasy romance series that follows a Fae king who is looking for the secret to save his people. The race of the Fae are tied to this big winged cat called the Tyrant, and the Tyrant are dying out. So when the king, Rain Tyrant Soul, is looking for a way to cure the Tyrant, he stumbles across a mortal girl called Elisetta Barastani, and it's a romance between them two. As soon as he lays eyes on her, he knows that she is his soulmate. And we also have a little bit more of a complicated plot in here, as it does tie to a 1,000-year-old war with the mages. Now I'm currently about a third of the way through book 3 of this, and I have been for months. I haven't picked it up for ages. I do really enjoy this series. I think the romance is pretty good. However, it does fall into some antiquated romance tropes, I want to say. It is all about courtesy and politeness, and Elisetta and Rain have to court, and it's just not really my type of romance. So while I do enjoy it, I'm not really loving this series. We then have the Books of Eerie by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a bind up of all of the books in the Eerie series, the first one being The Wizard of Eerie, which follows a young man called Ged who is especially gifted in magic. So he goes to this magic school, and one day when he's showing off in front of his friends, he accidentally releases this shadowy beast thing and then has to go hunt it down. I was reading this for Le Guin Along. We were going to read all of the books in this series. However, the Le Guin Along has been cancelled because none of the hosts, including myself, were enjoying this series. The books themselves are very short. I think the next one I have to read is Tahanu. I'm 3 books into the series, which is halfway through the series in terms of books, but as you can see from where my bookmark is, it's not halfway through in terms of pages. And honestly, this series is just a little bit of a drag. However, I am reluctant to DNF it because I've made it this far into this enormous tome, and DNF in this series in this case means that I'm going to DNF this massive book, and something in me just does not want to do that. We then have the Rat Queens comic series by Curtis J. Weeb. This is an adult high fantasy story that follows 4 boozy battle maidens who are mercenaries for hire. This story starts out where they have been arrested for starting yet another bar fight. They get thrown into jail, and then they are offered release on the condition that they perform a couple of quests for the realm. Now, as it's a comic series, there is more of a plot in here, and it does divulge into that further in the series, but I really like this series. I love all of the characters. We also have a whole ton of rep in here. There's a couple of sapphic relationships. There's also at least one trans character in here, and it also promotes things like body positivity. I'm currently 3 volumes into this series, and the art style does start to change around the point where I'm at, and I don't love the art style as much going forward. Because I really like the plot and the characters of this series, I am going to continue reading it. I'm just dragging my feet a little bit because the art style change is just putting me off a little bit. We then have the Moriarty Crow series by Jessica Townsend, which I do not have a dust jacket on this copy. This is the UK hardback, and I picked this up really cheap off eBay, and then when it arrived I figured out it's because it doesn't have a dust jacket on it. This is a children's series that follows a girl called Moriarty Crow who is a cursed child. Everything that happens in the town where she lives is blamed on her, and one day when they're having this bidding day where influential people in the town bid on children to take on as apprentices, a man called Jupiter North comes in and swoops away Moriarty Crow to the city of Nevermore, where he enters her into a series of trials that will gain her entry into the Wondrous Society. Now, the Wondrous Society is kind of like a magic school, but not really. It's just a school for all of these bizarre and magical things, and honestly I love this series so much. I have currently read the first 2 books in this series. The only reason I haven't continued is because the 3rd book is not out yet. I believe it is out later this month. I do have it on pre-order, so it'll show up at my door at some point, but I'm very, very excited to continue because the thing that I love about this is the world that Jessica Townsend has created is just so vivid and imaginative that you cannot help but get sucked in, and yeah, this blew me away when I read it. I very much would like to continue the Dreaming Sun series by Ichigo Zakano. This is a young adult contemporary series about a teenage girl who runs away from home. Her mother died a couple of years ago, her father has remarried, and they have a new baby, and the main character feels like she's being pushed out of her family. So she decides that she's going to run away from home, and she stumbles across this drunk guy in the park, and he offers her a place to stay providing that she fulfills 3 conditions. The first condition is that she tells him why she ran away. The second condition is that she finds his missing house key, and the third condition is that she has a dream and falls in love. I was very charmed by this first installment when I read it. I have only read the first installment. I really like all of the characters. It's pretty funny. It's like a young adult rom-com in a manga, and it's just heartwarming, you know. I really enjoyed it. However, I have tried to get hold of the 2nd volume of this, and it is currently unavailable on Amazon and also on Waterstones, so I may have to turn to eBay or wait for it to come back in print. I believe that with COVID delays, graphic novel and manga presses have been hit the hardest and have been struggling the most with getting the books printed, so I believe that my inability to get hold of the rest of the series is down to that, but sometime in the future I will continue on with this because I really loved it. Another children's series is the Legends of Eerie C by Thomas Taylor. I have only read the 1st book so far. The 2nd book came out this year. I believe it's called Gargantis. This follows a boy called Herbie Lemon who is the lost and founder at the Grand Nautilus Hotel, and one day a girl climbs in through his window because she is lost and she would like to be found. Now, in this book we have a very creepy seaside coastal town, and I really think that Thomas Taylor did a good job on bringing that to life because I have lived in one of these towns and I found it pretty accurate. This series, as you can imagine, focuses on the Legends of Eerie C, so this 1st book focuses on the legendary Malamander, and I'm assuming that there will be a different creature in the 2nd book. I don't read a whole ton of children's books, and I did really enjoy this one, so I imagine that I will continue on with this in the future, but I'm in no great hurry right now. We then have the Confessions of Georgie Nicholson series by Louise Renison. This is a young adult coming of age series told in diary format about a young girl who's 14 at the beginning of the series, and it is literally just her diary entries about her growing up, the arguments and fun times that she has with her friends, being interested in boys, them liking her or not liking her back. It's very funny, even if it is slightly outdated, and this was my favorite series from childhood. Now, I've been rereading this series since 2018, and the reason for that is that I never read the last book in this series, so I've spent the last nearly 3 years rereading this series so that I can finally read the last book and find out how it ends. I'm now at a point where I've reread everything aside from that last book, so I'm hoping to get to that very soon. I'm really excited to finally read the last book in this series, but also extremely nervous, but Georgie Nicholson will always have a very special place in my heart. We then have The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. This is the 1st book in a young adult duology. It is a contemporary fantasy that follows a group of of teenagers in this remote town in New York State, and they are the current generation of the founding families of the town. Each family has a specific ability, and their job is to hold back the grey, which is this alternate dimension where a demon lives. So this story starts off when the main character arrives back in town. Her mother left years ago, and she is discovering that she is one of the members of the founding families and that she has a role in stopping this demon from claiming more victims. Relating to the hype that this received last year, I wasn't actually sure that I was going to like it, so I was very pleasantly surprised when I did get really into this book. It is only a duology, so I only have one more book to read, which is The Deck of Omens, and I'm actually really excited to get to it. There's just so many books and so little time, guys. You have no idea how much I want to continue with all of these series, but it just seems like I never get a chance. Next up, we have Lifelike by J. Kristoff. This is the first book in his first young adult science fiction series. This is post-apocalyptic, and it is also a Anastasia retelling. This follows a girl called Eve who competes in robot wars to win money to buy medication for her grandfather who is dying of cancer. So this story starts off where Eve finds a lifelike, and lifelikes are a particular series of androids that were created a few years ago that are especially like humans, which is why they're called lifelikes. However, they were discontinued because they were a little bit too like humans, and they started to begrudge humans for the rights that they had that the lifelikes didn't have. So Eve finds this lifelike in a wreckage, and he actually knows her and starts to fill her in on a past life that she had no idea that she had. I didn't love the first book in this series because the setting isn't really for me. It's a little bit too scrap heapy, I want to say. It's quite hard for me to describe. I just didn't really gel with the setting. However, the plot twist at the end of this book blew my mind. I'm really attached to some of the characters. With the way this left off, I'm really excited to continue. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. We then have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. As I'm sure you're aware, this is a young adult dystopian series that follows a girl called Katniss Everdeen who lives in a world where every year they have the annual Hunger Games, which is where one boy and one girl from each district apart from the capital are chosen to enter into an arena and fight to the death, and the last person alive is the winner of the games. So as you can imagine, Katniss is chosen, and this is about her time in the annual Hunger Games. I'm rereading this series because I wanted to for the longest time. So I decided to do this. I think I started, was it the beginning of this year or last year? I have no recollection now, but I don't like this series anymore. I only have Mockingjay to read, but the characters just really irritate me. I don't like the writing. I wasn't finding it compelling. The only plus side for me at this point with this series is that the books are really easy to get through. I find the pacing really off, and that Suzanne Collins skips over really important things and then spends a lot of time dwelling on things that I really don't care about. This series will always hold a special place in my heart because of how much I loved it the first time I read it, which I think was the year that the first movie was released. At this point, at 27, I don't like this series anymore. Next up, we have Mistborn Era 1 by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in an adult epic fantasy series that follows a man called Kelsier who is putting together a team to take down the final empire. Kelsier is a Mistborn, and we also have another main character in here called Vin, who is also a Mistborn, and Kelsier stumbles across Vin, who has no idea about the powers that she actually has, and begins to train her in being a Mistborn. The magic system in this series revolves around metals, and the majority of people who can use this magic are called allomancers, and they can only control one of the metals. However, if you can control one or more, you are a Mistborn, which means that you can control all of the metals. So I really loved this book when I read it. This is one of my favorite books of the year, and I want to continue this series so bad. However, I've just been dragging my feet on reading other big books and other adult fantasy that I need to be reading for my own book club as well as other things, and so I never get around to this. The sequel to this is so close to being on my TBR every single month, and just other things pop up and it never quite makes it. I'm really sad because I'm desperate to continue with this. Next up is the Bargainer series by Laura Thalassa. This is an adult fantasy romance series that I absolutely adore. This follows a siren called Callie, and she has a string of over 300 300 black beads up her arm, and every black bead represents a debt that she owes to the bargainer. This story is told in two timelines. We have a past timeline set 7 years ago, and that is when Callie first meets the bargainer, and she originally strikes up a deal with him because she has killed her stepfather and needs his help covering it up. We then have the present day timeline where the bargainer has come to start recollecting the debts that Callie owes him, and there's a big mystery about why he's only just appeared after all these years to start collecting payments, where he's been, why he left, and all of that stuff. Now the love interest in here, the bargainer, is so much like Rhysand, but like better than Rhysand. This series is so compelling, so addictive, the romance is great, the smut is top notch. Would definitely 100% recommend this series. I've read the first 2 books, so the next thing I have to read is the novella An Emperor of Evening Stars, which is from Desmond's perspective, and I would have read it this month if my TBR wasn't massive, but I'm definitely hoping to get to it soon. These books do not take me long at all because I just fly through them, so when I can actually pick up the other 2 books in this series, we'll be done like that because I just fly through them. Next up we have Children of the Whales by Abby Umeda. This is an older teen fantasy manga series that follows a young boy called Chakuro who is the archivist on the Mud Whale. Now the Mud Whale is this floating island that floats on the sea of sand, and the occupants of the Mud Whale are very isolated. They have never seen another human being from outside of their community, so one day when their island floats past another and they scout it for supplies and find a girl who has been abandoned, this blows their world wide open because at this point they were speculating whether anything even existed outside of the Mud Whale. The volumes in this series are very hit and miss to me. I believe I gave the first volume 5 stars. Absolutely love the art style in here, which is the main thing that drew me to it. However, the pacing is a little bit off. We'll have one volume that's super action packed and then one where nothing really happens. I believe that I'm currently up to volume 5 of here, and I have 4 more that I own that I haven't read, but I do believe that there are more in the series that I don't own. I think it goes up to at least 10. I do try and pick up one of these every couple of months, so I'll get there eventually, but this is more of a marathon than a race. Next up we have another one of my favorites of the year, which is Fortuna Swan by KJ Sutton. This is a new adult fantasy romance series that follows a girl called Fortuna who is a nightmare, which means that she can kind of create illusions in people's minds that they are experiencing their worst fears. Now this story starts off where Fortuna's brother has been missing for a couple of years and she has exhausted every possible resource that she has to find him. However, one day a very powerful fairy male turns up at the bar where she works and tells her that he in fact knows where her brother is and will take her directly to him, providing that she marries him. I absolutely love this series. You guys know I do. I'm currently up to date on this as well. There's 2 books currently published. The 3rd book will be released in December and I am very, very excited. I'm actually friends with the author of this series now. I absolutely adore Kelsey, and we are going to be having a live show on my channel close to the release of the 3rd book in this series, so keep your eyes peeled for that if you are interested. Another self-published series is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This is about a young woman who marries the king of a neighboring kingdom. Now she has been raised in a desert from birth along with, I think she has 19 other sisters, and they have all been trained as assassins from birth with the sole purpose that one of them is going to marry this king of a neighboring kingdom and they will have to kill him. We have 2 perspectives in here. We follow the main character who is Lara and also the king who is Aaron, as Lara heads to this neighboring kingdom prepared to take it down from the inside, only to find out that they're maybe not as bad as she's been led to believe. It's a little bit of a slow burn and the main character is very slow to catch on at times, but by the time I got to the end of this I was thoroughly invested. The 2nd book in this series, The Traitor Queen, has already been released on Audible. However, the physical text copy is going to be released in September and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Next up is Serpent and Dove by Shelby McCurran. This is a young adult fantasy romance series that follows a witch called Louise LeBlanc who has run away from her coven. This book is set in medieval France and Louise is living as a thief. We also have a 2nd perspective in here who is the witch hunter Reed Diggory. Now Reed and Lou keep crossing paths until eventually they do get into a little bit of a tussle where Reed's honor is questioned, and because of that they are forced to get married. So this is an enemies to lovers story. Lou knows that Reed is a witch hunter, but he has no idea that she is a witch. And as you can imagine, a witch and a witch hunter are not a great mix because by nature, they do want to kill each other. I really enjoyed this book. I did give it 5 stars at the time. Thinking back on it, it was probably a little bit more of a 4-star. I did enjoy the romance in here and I did think that it was very fun. It's also very fast paced. I love the back and forth and the banter between the two main characters as they grow closer, but there were a couple of conveniences in here. The way that this book wrapped up is exactly as I expect a first book to wrap up to lead into a sequel, but I am still very interested in said sequel, which is Blood and Honey, and I believe that that is going to be released in September. We then have Oz by L. Frank Baum. So this is the first volume in the complete collection. There are 3 books in each volume, and I think there are at least 5 volumes in the complete collection. I have currently read the first book in this volume, so not even this entire book. So as you can imagine, I have quite a ways to go. The series of Oz is of course the series that inspired the movie The Wizard of Oz, which has also in turn inspired, along with the book series, a whole ton of other adaptations, spin-offs and everything. This is the story of Dorothy, who is a young girl from Kansas who is swept up in a tornado and deposited in the land of Oz, where she wants nothing more than to just go home again. So she must follow the yellow brick road with a few companions that she picks up along the way to go and see the wizard in Emerald City, hoping that he has the answer on how she can return home. I did really enjoy the first book in this series. It was a very fast, very easy read. Considering it is a classic that was originally published in 1900, it is an exceptionally quick read and I did thoroughly enjoy it. As somebody who watches the original movie every single year, I wondered whether I would actually gain anything extra from reading the first book in this, but I do think that it does contain a few things that the movie doesn't. So even if you are a huge fan of the movie or any of the other adaptations, I do think that there is some value still in here. I do very much want to continue and I will continue eventually. However, it's not a great priority because this is more of a nostalgia read and I'll just pick this up and read a book whenever I feel like it, really. Next up is the Daevabad series by S.A. Chakraborty, the first book being City of Brass. This is an adult fantasy series that follows a woman called Nari who is a con artist. Her trade is diagnosing people and she does actually have the ability to do this. However, if somebody wealthy comes to her thinking that they are sick, she will diagnose them with the worst thing she can possibly think of so that they go to her friend the apothecary, buy a whole ton of stuff that they don't need, and she then gets a cut of that money. Everything changes for Nari when she accidentally summons a djinn who tells her that she herself is also half djinn and they must travel to the City of Brass to uncover the secrets of Nari's upbringing and also delve a little bit into the past as well. I really enjoyed this first book. I found it to be incredibly atmospheric. The plot is quite complex but also very, very compelling, very intricate and very immersive. And like with Mistborn, I desperately want to continue this series, but the second 2 books in this series are a little bit chunkier than this one, so I'm struggling to squeeze them in. And then the last series that we are going to be talking about in today's video is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. I want to say that this is the first book in a duology, but I believe that the other book in this series is either a prequel or a companion novel. It's called The Boy on the Bridge. But this is a zombie story that takes place in the UK. We start off on a military base where zombie children are being kept and observed. One of our main characters is one of the zombie children. We also have one of their teachers, 2 soldiers who work on the military base, and also the doctor who is responsible for the construction of this military base, who is dissecting and using these zombie children to try and find a cure for the zombie plague. So I did enjoy this book. I thought I would enjoy it a lot more just based on the hype surrounding it. It's not necessarily a hyped book, but the majority of people I know who've read it really, really loved it. So I feel like I was expecting something a little bit special from it, and while it does have a unique perspective, I want to say, on a zombie apocalypse, and the ending did take me a little bit by surprise, I did feel like at the end of the day it was kind of a typical zombie story. So while I did enjoy this and I do plan on reading The Boy on the Bridge, it didn't blow me away. So that is it. Those are the 20 series that I would like to have finished by the end of 2020. I don't want to say it's impossible for me to finish all of these by the end of the year, but I'm going to say that there is a 99.9% chance that I'm not going to finish all of these series by the end of the year, because I don't know, there's other books I want to read as well, you know. Even though I shouldn't, I can't resist also starting new series. It's a bad habit. I need to just focus on these, because prior to BookTube, I was the kind of person who would start and finish a series within like a month or less than a month, depending on how much I was reading. And I want to be that person again, because that person was way more organized than this person. Down in the comments, let me know if you have started any of these series, if there's any you think that it's not worth me finishing. I mean, I probably am going to anyway, because I'm that kind of person, but please do let me know. But that is about it for this video, guys, so please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.